My grandfather, LeRoy Deters, owned Nemaha Valley Motors in Seneca, Kansas for 28 years. The following story is based off of an interview I had with him in November of 2012 about his experiences owning a car dealership in Seneca, Kansas. My grandfather had farmed until 1964 when he decided to enter into the car business with his good friend Val Smits. Grandpa decided to quit farming because of health issues, mainly asthma problems. He almost moved to Albuquerque, but he got to talking with Val about car dealerships. They decided they were both interested and looked into it. They visited the Ford dealer in Seneca, but Grandpa and Val were young and didn't have the money the dealer wanted paid up front. But it turned out that LeRoy McGinney, a dealer from Seneca, wanted to sell his business because of personal issues. He contacted Grandpa and Val, and they bought the business. They began Nemaha Valley Motors as a used car dealership in February of 1964. Back then, air conditioning, power steering, and automatic transmissions were all optional in cars. Grandpa sold his first car, a 1963 Chevy, to Art Fenton. About 6 months later, Jerry Augud, the Chrysler representative, approached them with selling Chrysler products. He told them he would put them on a letter for a year, and if they didn't like it, he would come and take everything back. Grandpa and Val decided they couldn't lose anything out of the deal, so they agreed. The first Chrysler Grandpa sold was a '76 Newport Custom to Linus Sudbeck. It had tinted windows, automatic power steering, brakes, air conditioning, and an AM/FM radio. Back then, that car listed for $42.65 on the window. Nowadays, we pay that much sales tax when we buy a newer car. It turned out to be a good deal for their business. They went out and talked to farmers in fields and visited people. The business was a lot different than it is today. After a year, they took on parts. They added onto the building, enlarging the shop and building a showroom. At night, after 5 o'clock, they would travel to Topeka to try to sell cars to people who had called them. They wouldn't get back home until around midnight. Pretty soon, the word was out in Topeka, and people were traveling to Seneca to price cars from Grandpa and Val. Ray Droege owned a barber shop in Topeka and helped spread the word about Grandpa and Val's cars. If he got someone interested, Grandpa and Val would drive down the car they were interested in and try to sell it. Or if they wanted a new car, they would take their materials down to Topeka to try to sell one that way. After Nemaha Valley Motors had taken on Chrysler for 2 years, they began selling GMC trucks in 1967. In 1970, they took on Dodge. Grandpa and Val's hard work was paying off. Business was going well. They had tried hiring a couple salesmen at one time, but it didn't seem to work out well, so Grandpa and Val continued to sell cars on their own. Although they did hire a parts man, service manager, a couple other mechanics, a cleanup boy, and a bookkeeper, Deb Cook, who still works there today. They had also built a car wash, which allowed them to keep their vehicles looking clean, which was a good asset for their business. Grandpa and Val used to travel to Kansas City and Omaha to attend car auctions. Grandpa mainly went to KC, while Val usually drove to Omaha. It was quite an experience to go to an auction. People were demanding and forceful, which required them to have to stand their ground. At auctions, there was a building with 3 lanes of cars going through at a time. Everyone would be around them, and the auctioneer would be up on a pedestal with his clerk. They would find a car they wanted and stay around to place bids. If they didn't get the car, they would pick out another car and try again. Sometimes, they would come home with a half-dozen cars. When they bought cars from auctions, they always took drivers with them to drive the cars home. If they didn't have enough drivers for the number of cars they bought, they would take home what they could and make a trip back to get the rest. They always had to travel to the southeast corner of KC to get their cars through lots of traffic. Fortunately, they never had a wreck or accident, although they did manage to get picked up by the highway patrol once in a while. Grandpa and Val always went to the Chrysler sales and got service people's used Chryslers. In 1969, they got all of the Roadrunners they could get their hands on from around the district. The Roadrunner was a popular seller. Grandpa remarked that the only mistake he made was not keeping a couple of them. A couple of the best-selling cars of the time were the Plymouth K-Car and the Dodge Omni Horizon. Grandpa and Val's favorite car was a blue Plymouth Thunderbird, which they regretfully sold. With all that hard work, Grandpa and Val had to make time for some play and relaxation. At least once a year, they would close up shop and go fishing. There were not many big changes in cars during the time Grandpa and Val ran the business together. Cars stayed fairly basic, but with each decade, a few more changes were added. In the 90s, the biggest change happened, which was integrating more technology into cars. Mechanics had to go to school every so often to keep up with changes, otherwise they lost out. Even though Grandpa enjoyed the car business, he couldn't deny his true passion, farming. It was hard for Grandpa to do justice to both jobs, when both were so demanding and time-consuming. Grandpa had the urge to get out of the car business so he could get away from the hustle and the bustle. He longed to be out on a tractor where nobody would bother him, and to have time to raise cattle, which he really enjoyed. So Grandpa and Val decided to try to sell Nemaha Valley Motors. They couldn't get their business sold, so Grandpa proposed that Val buy his half and keep the business going. Val decided that since everything was there, he just had to keep going, so he decided to purchase Grandpa's half of the business. Grandpa left the car business in February of 1992, after 28 years of hard work and devotion to Nemaha Valley Motors. Grandpa remarked that he misses the people more than anything. Looking back, Grandpa and Val accomplished a true feat. Through hard work, determination, and many sacrifices, they succeeded in creating a successful, well-known, and well-respected car dealership.
Because everybody said we'd never make it. So, but we fooled them. We worked hard at it.